What is up, my friends? Welcome to another segment of the show, Global Economic Report. Today, we're going to talk about the digital currency phenomenon. We're going to talk about Bitcoin and this weird article that was published in 1988 in The Economist talking about how there would be a world digital currency in 2018. That's right. You see the cover on the screen right now. And here's the crazy thing. I am by far the first person to talk about this, but it's strange. And when I first started hearing about this, I actually ignored it. And so I heard about this months ago, and it went through a cycle of popularity, I think maybe 3-4 months ago. If you just look here, you'll see like I'm not the first one to talk about this. January, we saw a big influx of people talking about it. This actually isn't the full article. If you Google search this, don't click on this, because even though it's their official website, they want you to actually buy it in print form. Look at this. We got videos, all these videos talking about it over the last couple years, actually. Forum posts, Reddit posts, Steemits, Mediums. It's really, really wacky. The reason why I want to talk about this is because I just did the video, Is Bitcoin Doomed? And I talk about how the MasterCard patent for fraction reserve Bitcoin is a bad thing, where everybody's kind of celebrating it. The overall notion of institutional money that's been kind of a rally war cry since November of 2017 has turned out to be not a good thing. ETFs, which there's 9 currently pending with a decision to be made in December. Those are not good things at all. Future contracts that were rolled out almost a year ago today have done nothing for the price action but pull it down. And so it begs the question, and let's take a step back and let's really get some 40,000 foot view perspective, because what if this whole thing is a psyop? What if this whole thing was planned, orchestrated? And so this is the theory, right? This isn't my theory, but I think it's an interesting one. What if the whole thing was planned, that this anonymous cryptocurrency would be released by somebody who could never be tracked, traced, or found, who would never come out publicly and talk about it? It would sort of pull on all these revolutionists, these anarchists, these cyberpunks to get behind this notion of down with the banks, down with the Fed, down with the IMF, the central banks. Here's this revolution of a anonymous cryptocurrency. What's interesting is that how the distributed ledger technology works and how all transactions are actually listed on the ledger for Bitcoin and how its blockchain actually works is that actually if there was a way to track all the addresses themselves, which there is, it would actually make it easier to track money, not harder. It would actually make it easier to track the transactions themselves, which on a global scale I'm just playing devil's advocate and thinking from the position of the governments themselves, or let's say these 12 or 13 or 31 families that supposedly rule the planet. Wouldn't they want more control? Like international trade-wise, international transaction-wise, wouldn't they want more tracking and more control and more transparency on that so that they could track it? And the answer is yes, of course they would. So why I'm fresh on this and talking about this is like the second or third time Zero Hedge has run a piece on this. And this is run by Brandon Smith, is the actual writer. Come on. And so here's the headline. Did the IMF reveal that cryptocurrency is the new world order endgame? What it really breaks down quite well is different aspects of Bitcoin, but also too, like, we all can feel that there's this push towards a smarter way of doing international exchange, right? And right now we have over 100 fiats. I think it's 152 or 180. I'll flash the exact amount on the screen right now. There's a ton of fiats, and there's this arbitrage and gap in between the fiats right now. And with a one world currency, you could obviously manage that much better. You could manage it, track it, etc. But how would you do that? And with so many varying opinions, so many varying religions, so many varying differences in people, how would you ever get all the countries to agree on that, or a ton of the countries to agree on that? Well, this article actually explores the notion that the IMF already has this in place. Okay, so what I'm going to do is let's unpack this here, and then we're going to talk about some specifics on Bitcoin. We're going to talk about what the IMF just released recently, and we're going to actually look at this issue of the Economist from 1988 and talk about some of the things that were going on back then and why this was really predicted back then. So first off, let's start at the very beginning. 2 kinds of schemes, and one is that it's a shock and awe, and so it comes out with speed and momentum, and so people are kind of taken off kilter by it, and so they're more likely to believe it. And the second type of scheme is slow. So let it gain momentum, let it grow over time. And if you look at Bitcoin, Bitcoin has now been around for 10 years, starting with the white paper release in 2009. It actually just hit its 10-year anniversary. I believe it's in October. Okay, so let's look at some of the odd things now. The fact that Bitcoin was built on the SHA-256 hash function, which was originally created by the NSA, or National Security Agency, and the entire concept was remarkably similar to what was described in an NSA paper published in 1996 titled How to Make a Mint, the Cryptography of Anonymous Electronic Cash. All these are real things. I will link to all these specific pieces underneath the video so that you can check them out. But yeah, these are like real published papers and articles, okay? Which Brandon Smith, just to take a side note, he originally wrote up a few articles dating all the way back to 2017. The globalist one world currency will look a lot like Bitcoin. And these are very in-depth pieces with citations, with links off to actual, like he doesn't just make deductions. He makes deductions based off of these pieces. And so you can go and follow these breadcrumbs if you want to, but makes a very compelling argument. And so what we're starting to notice, and why I'm starting to try and stretch my own perspective, is that everything that I was hoping didn't come true, but then kind of came true in exact fashion or fairly close to exactly how I thought it would come true, because a lot of that is now coming true with cryptocurrencies, it's gotten me to ask more questions, ask deeper questions, and take a greater step back, right? And look at like what's really at play. So what triggered it originally was I consider myself quite ignorant with cryptocurrencies. And then as soon as the futures contracts launched in December 2017, and then the market completely took a shit, that's when I scratched my head and took a step back and went deep into a lot of varying areas, started to research other commodities and what ETFs did for them, and what futures did for them, and what all of these institutional investment tools did for them. And that's when I started to kind of piece together this puzzle, which is why I'm able to quote unquote predict a lot of what's happening, is because it's just simply a duplication of what's already happened in the past in other markets. So this link will be underneath the video as well too. Even if you absolutely love Bitcoin, you're a diehard cryptocurrency enthusiast, read it. You should be able to stay open to other opinions and other things, right? Because I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I'm just saying it's really interesting. Okay, so there's those two articles. He published one in July, one in December of 2017. He pieces together breadcrumbs of coincidence. Obviously, the biggest one is, why is the core functionality, the core technology of Bitcoin itself something that the NSA created? So to take a side note here for a second, is there isn't a lot of information about digital currencies before Bitcoin, but there were some. There was, I believe, about 30 or 40, and there was a clean sweep that happened in the early 2000s, I think it was 2005 or 2006, that the FBI or international agencies did like a clean sweep. And one of the problems was that they were centralized, meaning that they had all the servers at one location, and most of these locations were inside the US. So there was like this event, this digital currencies event, and then like within 30 days of that, almost every single one of them were shut down, seized, money laundering charges, people put in jail, and the whole thing just kind of dried up overnight. And then everybody went away, and a lot of these people apparently went into hiding. And then here we go, 2009, this Bitcoin is released and it's decentralized. Just as much of an argument that you could make that this is a government psyop, you could make the same argument that the people that were involved in it originally just got smarter and realized that centralization of the servers, of how the transactions are logged and kept, is a big part of the problem. You know, you could make the argument just as much that they were regular people who just went and leveraged some technology and some things that were already out there. Maybe an ex-government worker, maybe an ex-federal level worker that was just super bitter, and then took these technologies that they already knew existed but were solid and trustworthy to work and create this. So anyways, we can't deny that we've very publicly seen wishy-washy statements from everyone from from Warren Buffett, he stayed consistent, to Jamie Dimon, and that is the head of JP Morgan. We've seen almost every economist talking head come out. It seems like some of them have done a complete 180 on what they were talking about, while others have stayed true to their comments. But the crescendo to all of this, and what's very interesting of all of this, is Christine Lagarde, or Legrand, or Lagrage, however you want to pronounce her last name, came out just last week with a paper titled Winds of Change, the Case for New Digital Currency. And she's the head of the IMF. What's interesting about this piece is that it reads more like a sales letter for other banks and media to get a hold of and grab talking points from. Not so much building a strong case of why this should be. Okay, so let's look at that. 3 things that she wants to cover. This is the actual piece right here. Okay, it's literally on the IMF.org website. Second thing she wants to talk about: evaluate the role for central banks in a new financial landscape, especially in providing digital currency. What we know to be true is that usually before something is rolled out, it's already been in development, it's already done, it's already ready to go. Third, look at some downsides to consider how they can be minimized. Okay, so let's scroll down here. I had a section of this highlighted that I wanted to talk about, but I think I refreshed the page and lost it. Let me be more specific. Should the central banks issue a new digital form of money, a state-backed token, or perhaps an account held directly at central bank available to people, firms for retail payments? True, your deposits in commercial banks are already digital, but a digital currency would be a liability of the state, like cash today, not a private firm. This is not science fiction. Various central banks around the world are seriously considering these ideas, including Canada, China, Sweden, and Uruguay. I would actually add India to that, because India, being one of the largest populations on the planet, has been playing games as well. Russia is already rolling out their own state-backed digital currency, but India is the next one to watch and pay attention to. China went full 180, banned, then not banned, and with talks of now wanting to create their own digital currency. They are embracing change and new thinking, as indeed is the IMF. It's interesting. You can only look at so many coincidences before you start to see that it's not a coincidence. It might just be synchronicity with something that's much larger that was already planned. So let's now talk about the original article. I really don't know why this always refreshes and kicks up like that. Zero Hedge is one of the worst websites, loading wise and CPU usage wise. It's just so resource heavy. It drives me nuts. But the original article in 1988, let's talk about that, predicted that by 2018 there would be this digital currency, and they called it the Phoenix in this example. The article, here it is right here. I'll also link this. What it talks about is the issues that were going on back then in 1987 and 1988 with international exchange. That was a big problem back then. Obviously, I was just a kid, so I don't really know. And I've gone back and done a decent amount, well, a thin amount of research. I'll do more so that I can really get an idea of where their head was at when this was being talked about, and obviously when this article was written. But that's like the whole first half of this piece, is just talking about the ongoing problem and why that would eventually lead to something like a digital currency, which would have no borders. So here's a piece that I highlighted. In all these ways, national economic boundaries are slowly dissolving. As the trend continues, the appeal for a currency union across at least the main industrial countries will seem irresistible to everybody except foreign exchange traders and governments. In the Phoenix zone, which again he called it the Phoenix coin, and the Phoenix zone would be this zone or territory of countries that all played ball with this digital currency, economic adjustment to shifts in relative prices would happen smoothly and automatically, rather as it does today between different regions within large economies. The absence of all currency risk would spur trade, investment, and employment. A lot of people, I think, overall are going to look at this as a bad thing because more control, because more globalist agenda. You can't deny, though, that right now there is problems with how international trade is done and how the rate of fiat is exchanged. Now, I'm not using that as any means to any juxtaposition to say that this is the answer, this is a good thing. I actually don't think it's a good thing. That being said, I think right now what we've got isn't working. And do I think that Bitcoin could actually turn into a global currency that everyone could use? I don't actually know. I bounce back and forth. I really do. At times I see that it could really do it, and then at times I see that it can't. But I definitely think that out of all of them, the one that's getting pushed the most by bankers ex-bankers, banking institutions, getting heavy inroads with Swift is Ripple, unfortunately. So Ripple was pre-mined. It's not a decentralized currency. It's actually centralized by not only the pre-mined wallets, but the people who run the project itself. So it is not a decentralized currency. So it is the closest thing to this Phoenix coin that we actually have on the market right now. The Phoenix Zone would impose tight constraints on national governments. There would be no such thing, for instance, as national monetary policy. The world Phoenix supply would be fixed by a new central bank descended perhaps from the IMF. The world inflation rate, and hence within narrow margins, each national inflation rate would be in its charge. Each country could use taxes and public spending to offset temporary falls in demand, but it would have to borrow rather than print money to finance its budget deficit. With no recourse to the inflation tax, governments and other creditors would be forced to judge their borrowing and lending plans more carefully than they do today. This, I think, is a good thing. I think that the terms and policy around lending should be much, much tighter. Just shot a video the other day about a $9 trillion corporate debt bubble. We've got the student loan bubble. We've got the personal debt bubble that's going on in the United States. All of these partially are to be blamed by the actual lending terms that we accept in the United States and have in the United States. I think the overall credit score and credit system is a little bit outdated and should be looked at. This means a big loss of economic sovereignty, but the trends that make the Phoenix so appealing are taking that sovereignty away in any case. So what do we see happening right now? We see a lot of cracks in the system. We see fiat's not really working. We're on borrowed time with the global deficit and with the US deficit especially. The US dollar has lasted way longer than it should have. We've been off of any sort of gold standard since 1971. So there are serious questions to be answered. I just don't think that this is the way to do it. Legrande's latest pitch was written like a sales pitch. Latest piece was written like a sales pitch, selling the idea of central bank crypto, not to central bankers, but to the financial media. But the central bankers run the media already. So again, I like this piece. Don't take it as gospel. Don't take it as truth. Look at it as a contrarian view to, if you're like a diehard crypto fan, then this should maybe pick apart some of that and get you to ask deeper questions. If you're already on the side of not liking crypto, well, then this will just be confirmation bias for you. Okay, so ends it with, I suggest that the IMF already has a cryptocurrency mechanism ready to replace the dollar as world reserve, and that it will be infused into the SDR basket. SDR standing for Special Drawing Rights by the IMF basket at the height of the coming crash. The fact that the IMF has been introducing central bank crypto talking points over the past year indicates to me that the crash is imminent. So I think that there is a crash imminent, and I think that they totally do start to seed consciousness with the media, with talking points as they are trying to roll out a new belief system, a new point of view, a new opinion. They 100% do this, and we've seen this very black and white with the political landscape in the United States in this last 2 years since Trump has become president. We've seen just who sits where in terms of like actual news agencies, Hollywood, talking head figures, what side of the fence they sit on, because how they seed and how they push out talking points has been really, really obvious to see for a lot of us. In the same way, since I would say middle 2017, have been really seeding the conversation and the talking points about digital currencies. So there you have it, my friends. This is simply just more information for you to make a more educated decision. I do think that between this and the fractional reserve, Bitcoin, and the ETF stuff and the futures contracts and what we've seen that actually do to the crypto market, I do think that long-term vision should be questioned and long-term holding should be looked at. I think there's going to be a lot of people who hold on to Bitcoin until the wheels fall off and it's too late. What I'm looking at is I'm looking at making adjustments to my personal 2 to 5 year window with what I hold in my portfolio and what we manage and what we do ourselves, because these are all concerns that are quickly unraveling and they should be taken into consideration with any portfolio and how you're balancing your own personal risk. So there you have it, my friends. That's it for this video. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like it, just click the like button. It shows us so much support. If you want to comment and interact below, you got some feedback, you got some opinions on this whole working theory, go ahead and share it with us below. I'd love to read it. I do read probably 70-80% of the comments. And if you're fresh to the channel And it's your first time and you like what we're doing, click the subscribe button, hit the bell notification. Be on the lookout because we'll be dropping more videos like this very soon on the channel, my friends. Okay, bye.